faithfully sharing insights and interpreting the world's best books. Hello, this is Sally with Book Talk on Qing Dynasty history. Historian Zhao Yi once commented on Zhu Yuanzhang. He said that in Emperor Taiyuzu, the qualities of a sage, a hero, and a bandit could be said to coexist. Why did Zhao Yi hold such a view? This is because Zhu Yuanzhang's own experiences are truly legendary. From a commoner's son to a wandering monk, then to a leader of the Red Turban Army, in the chaos of the late Yuan dynasty, he rose to become a king, founded the great Ming Dynasty, and shaped China's historical landscape for over 500 years. From this perspective, Zhu Yuanzhang can be considered a great emperor for the ages. So, what are some serious works that can help us understand Zhu Yuanzhang's life? This is the book I'm recommending today. Biography of Zhu Yuanzhang by the renowned Ming Dynasty historian Wu Han. In the book, Wu Han comprehensively outlines Zhu Yuanzhang's life. What makes this book special is that it focuses on the grand founding history of the Ming Dynasty, led by Zhu Yuanzhang, rather than historical legends and anecdotes about him, which makes it a must-read for understanding Zhu Yuanzhang and ranks it among the four great biographies of the 20th century. Without further ado, let me now take you into this book to appreciate this figure of the times together. How did he establish the great Ming Dynasty? As one of the few emperors in Chinese history who came from a commoner background, Zhu Yuanzhang's early life can be described with the words miserable fate. In 1328, Zhu Yuanzhang was born in Guzlang village, Zhangli, Bochou, which is today's Fenyang, Anhui. This Zhu family raised 4 boys and 2 girls, 6 children in total. He was the youngest, named Yuanzhang. This name was given later after he rose to prominence as a military leader. His original name was Zhu Chengba. Zhu Yuanzhang's father, Zhu Wusi, was a tenant farmer his whole life. Sometimes, the year's harvest couldn't even cover the rent, and the family lived in poverty. As a child, Zhu Yuanzhang had no money for schooling and worked as a cowherd. At age 15, his hometown suffered a drought. The next year, locusts and plague struck. His parents, brothers, and sisters died one after another, and the remaining relatives scattered. With no way out, Yuan Chang followed the advice of Aunt Wang next door and became a monk at the Huanzhou temple in his hometown to get a simple meal, better than starving to death. At the temple, Zhu Yuanzhang worked as a sinteng, equivalent to a laborer, doing hard cleaning work every day. Not even a few dozen days after arriving at Wangui Temple, the temple ran out of food, and Zhu Yuanzhang had to leave to beg for food. This time, he traveled throughout the middle and upper reaches of the Huai River, witnessing the warmth and coldness of worldly human relationships firsthand. He later recalled this period, saying his body was like tumbleweed, blown by ceaseless winds, his heart boiling with anxiety. With no livelihood, his inner torment couldn't be eased amidst the chaotic times. Like drifting tumbleweed weren't just wandering monks. Like Zhu Yuanzhang, the entire Yuan Empire stood like a building filled with wind before the coming storm. The Yuan dynasty implemented a 4-class policy. Mongols occupied the top tier, followed by Semir people from the western regions who held high positions. After conquering the Jin and southern Song dynasties, Yuan classified people from former Jin territory as Han and those from southern Song territory as Southerners. These two groups became low-class outcasts, politically oppressed, bearing heaviest taxes with deep-seated public resentment. From its founding, Yuan enforced brutal military control over these regions, ruthlessly suppressing all resistance. Zhu Yuanzhang. During his youth, Emperor Shun ruled. Deeply superstitious, he even supported a Western shamaness, a female sorcerer. The emperor frequently sought her divinations, She prophesied Shun would die by Southerners' hands. Hearing this, Shun naturally panicked and banned Han men from possessing weapons. If Han men own horses, they were confiscated. But where there's oppression, there's resistance. Han people yearned for salvation, especially in Zhu Yuanzhang's Huai River region, modern Hengan Anhui, Hubei border, where unbearable poverty drove many to White Lotus and Manichaeism, awaiting Maitreya Buddha's descent to end worldly suffering. In 1351, Yuan's mass conscription for Yellow River repairs finally ignited public fury. White Lotus leader Han Shantong and Lu Futong rebelled in modern Fuyang, Anhui. Their Red Turban forces became the Red Turban Army, sparking uprisings across southern China. Next year, a leader named Guo Zixing brought his troops to Fengyang. This area belonged to Haozhou, where Bozhou residents eagerly joined Guo's banner. Zhu Yuanzhang's friends wrote urging him to join these Red Turban forces. After careful thought, Zhu realized failure to join meant inevitable death when Yuan troops arrived with retaliatory slaughter. So he joined Guo Zixing's forces, officially beginning his military career. This year, Zhu Yuanzhang was 24 years old. That sums up his early life. Next comes his military journey. When Zhu Yuanzhang joined the army, he was just an unknown soldier. So how did he start small and eventually conquer the world? There are 3 periods here. First, fierce battles against rivals. Second, the northern expedition to the Central Plains. First, under rebel leader Guo Zixing, Zhu Yuanzhang gained military power and became the de facto successor to Guo, commander of the Red Turban Army. When Zhu Yuanzhang joined, Guo Zixing's group had already occupied Bozhou. Guo Zixing saw that he was tall and sturdy, composed in demeanor, and had connections with brothers in the Red Turban Army, so he took him as a personal guard. Zhu Yuanzhang worked diligently and carefully in the army, showing great responsibility. Guo Zixing greatly appreciated him and personally presided over the wedding, marrying his adopted daughter Lady Ma to him. Lady Ma followed Zhu Yuanzhang in campaigns east and west. After Zhu established the Ming Dynasty, he made her empress. Zhu became the marshal's son-in-law, and from then on he was called Master Zhu in the army, gaining status. Thus, he adopted the official name Yuanzhang and his courtesy name Gulri. The next year, to address the troop shortage in Bozhou, Zhu Yuanzhang returned to his hometown to recruit soldiers. His childhood friends and fellow villagers flocked to join him, and in under 10 days, he recruited 700 men. Some of these men fought alongside Zhu Yuanzhang continuously and became known as the Huaishi Old Guard. Later, when Yuanzhang became emperor, these soldiers became founding heroes, forming his core team. Zhu Yuanzhang transformed from a personal guard to a commander. After that, he freely recruited soldiers and horses, expanding his army, conquering places like Chuzhou and Hezhou, north of modern-day Nanjing, one after another. Everywhere he went, he gathered stragglers and strengthened his forces. After reorganization, Zhu Yuanzhang's army began systematic development. Scholarly advisors began to appear in the army. Li Shanchan, Zhu Yuanzhang's most important advisor, joined his forces when Zhu headed south to Chuzhou. Later, he devised strategies, communicated between army ranks, and made great contributions to founding the nation. At that time, it was popular in the army to adopt foster sons, which helped cultivate loyal forces. Zhu Yuanzhang was no exception. He also kept brave and handsome youths like Mu Ying by his side as foster sons, strengthening bonds within his army. And 2 years later, in 1355, the Red Turban Army established their capital in modern-day Bozhou Anhui and enthroned their emperor, Han Liner, who proclaimed himself the Little Ming King, claiming to be the 9th generation descendant of Emperor Huazong of Song. Thus, this regime adopted Song as its dynastic name. Luo Zixing's troops were also active in the Anhui area, becoming the military force that this small court relied on. However, shortly after the small court was established, Guo Zixing died of illness. The little Ming king appointed Guo Zixing's son, Guo Tianshu, as the Grand Marshal, with Zhu Yuanzhang and Zhang Tianyou as left and right deputy marshals, respectively. Although Zhu Yuanzhang held the third highest position in the army, Guo Tianshu was young and lacked military experience, and Zhang Tianyou couldn't make decisive judgments on major matters. And Zhu Yuanzhang could make decisions and handle affairs, becoming the de facto commander. In September of that year, to solve the army's food shortage problem, Zhu Yuanzhang decided to cross the Yangtze River and capture modern-day Nanjing. In this battle, Guo Tianshu and Zhang Tianyou both perished, and Zhu Yuanzhang naturally inherited Guo Zixing's entire army, becoming the Grand Marshal. After 4 years of campaigning, with Nanjing as his base, Zhu Yuanzhang captured places like Chengxing, Changzhou, Ningguo, Jiangyin, Huizhou, and Yangzhou, and was appointed by the Little Ming King as the chancellor of the Jiangman branch secretariat, gaining actual control over this region. At this point, Zhu Yuanzhang had completed the first step of his imperial endeavor. It took him 8 years to gain his own armed forces and territory. However, at this time, Zhu Yuanzhang's strength wasn't prominent among the many contenders. To emerge victorious from this crowd, he still had a long way to go. This marks the second step: fierce battles against rival warlords. This section is substantial in the book. Here, I systematically outline Zhu Yuanzhang's adversaries. First, Zhu Yuanzhang's competitors can roughly be divided into 2 types of regimes. As we mentioned, in 1351, the Red Turban Army rose up, and south of the Yellow River, numerous warlords emerged. These military forces split into 2 branches. One is the Red Army faction, and the other is the non-Red Army faction. Moreover, even within the Red Turban Army, it split into eastern and western branches. The eastern branch centered around the Huai River Basin, with the Little Ming King as their spiritual leader. The core strength of this part of the Red Turban Army was Zhu Yuanzhang, who held military power. The western branch of the Red Turban Army centered around the Han River Basin, occupying areas like modern Hubei and Jiangxi, with Chen Yulian being the most powerful among them. He himself established the Han Kingdom and also became emperor. If you were to move east along the river, the first target would naturally be Zhu Yuanzhang in Nanjing. The greatest non-Red Army threat to Zhu Yuanzhang was former salt smuggler Zhang Xicheng, who occupied Suzhou and Hanzhou area, proclaimed himself emperor, and founded the Zhou Kingdom. Zhang Xicheng's territory lay precisely east of the Nanjing area. Thus, Zhu Yuanzhang's greatest threats became clear: Chen Yuliang to the west and Zhang Xicheng to the east. These 2 powers coordinated with each other, aiming to crush Zhu Yuanzhang, sandwiched between them. Tracing this perilous situation, how did Zhu Yuanzhang carve out a bloody path? Zhu Yuanzhang's path to victory began with establishing a solid rear base. In 1357, after capturing Huizhou, Confucian scholar Zhu Sheng advised him with 3 principles: build high walls, store abundant grain, delay claiming kingship. These phrases advised him: first, consolidate the rear; second, develop productivity; third, minimize visibility and plan for the long term. This greatly influenced Zhu's later endeavors. After taking Huizhou, he avoided reckless advances into enemy territory. Instead of confronting Chen Yuliang directly in Jiangxi, he focused on stabilizing his rear, which presented 2 major challenges. First, develop productivity to solve the internal grain crisis. Second, plan long-term to eliminate external military threats. First, let's discuss the grain crisis Zhu Yuanzhang faced. This had been a major army challenge since his early days in Bozhou. Zhu's southward campaign from Huai across the Yangtze to capture Jiangnan was largely motivated by securing new regions for army provisions. But after years of war, more joined the army while fewer farmed. Even in Jiangnan's grain belt, requisitioning provisions became extremely difficult. What solution existed? Zhu Yuanzhang implemented military farming. In 1358, he appointed Marshal Kang Mao Kai as agricultural commissioner to manage irrigation, restore farming, and supply the army. Additionally, he sent generals to reclaim wasteland everywhere, establishing reward systems based on production output. Simultaneously, he drafted civilians to farm during planting seasons and train during off times. This military farming system quickly proved effective within years. Soldiers combined farming with military duties, granaries filled with grain, creating this favorable situation. Zhu Yuanzhang explicitly banned grain requisitions from civilians. When launching campaigns, troops no longer needed to plunder local supplies, thus stabilizing military morale and winning popular support. Wu Han commented on Zhu Yuanzhang's military farming policy, saying these actions were exactly why all other warlords failed one after another, while only the latecomer Zhu Yuanzhang succeeded. After Zhu Yuanzhang founded the Ming Dynasty, he promoted this military farming model nationwide, which is what we know as the Waisuo system. Zhu Yuanzhang himself was super satisfied with this system, saying he supported 1 million soldiers without costing folks a single grain. With internal grain production solved, Zhu started seriously thinking about the strategy of delaying kingship. At the end of Yuan, warlords in the south carved out territories, attacking each other, and often liked to found kingdoms and call themselves emperors, like Chen Yuliang's kingdom. Chen Yuliang's kingdom was Han, and Zhang Shicheng's kingdom was Zhao. Both followed that pattern. Once you proclaim yourself emperor, you become an easy target. Forces within the Red Turban Army would disapprove, and the Yuan army would make you their top priority to hit. Zhu Yuanzhang weighed his own strength and legitimacy, finding far from enough. First off, he was under the Little Ming King's command. Calling himself emperor would mean betrayal, easily isolating him. On the flip side, the Yuan army marched south and beat the Little Ming King, losing the north. Zhu's base was directly exposed. By not proclaiming emperor, he gave himself room to negotiate with the Yuan. With the enemy strong and him weak, he once sought peace with Yuan general Chagan Temur to get a breather. So, building up strength was the key thing. Zhu Yuanzhang took the strategy of defeating the warlords one by one. In the second half of 1359, the first to attack Zhu Yuanzhang was Chen Yuliang to his west. Chen Yuliang had the strongest military, largest territory, and biggest ambition among the warlords. He sent envoys to Zhang Shicheng in the east, agreeing to attack from both sides, planning to split Zhu's territory, creating a pincer situation. In this crisis, Zhu consulted his strategist, Liu Ji, who reckoned Zhang Shicheng, being a former salt smuggler, was petty in matters, full of worries and suspicions. Chen Yuliang was a former fisherman, used to life in storms, ambitious and greedy. One was conservative and steady, the other adventurous and aggressive. Therefore, prioritized the threats from the northeast and western fronts. Chen Yuliang was the main enemy, with elite troops and big ships. Plus, he held an advantageous upstream position. So, concentrate forces first to take out Chen Yuliang. With the upstream threat gone, Zhang Shicheng downstream would be no big deal and could be settled in one go. After wiping out these two powers, then head north to seize the Central Plains. Then, the imperial enterprise could be achieved. Liu Ji's view was greatly approved by Zhu Yuanzhang, and it became actual history. In 1363, Chen Yuliang mobilized his entire nation's forces, marched east down the Yangtze River, and besieged Hongdu, which is today's Nanchang. Hmm. If Hongdu fell, Chen Yuliang could easily attack Nanjing, and then Zhu Yuanzhang would be completely defeated. Zhu Yuanzhang was forced into a decisive battle. He personally led 200,000 troops to confront Chen Yuliang's 600,000 army at Poyang Lake. This battle was a life-or-death struggle. Although Zhu Yuanzhang was inferior in troop size and equipment compared to Chen, Wu Han believed Zhu had three major advantages. First, Chen's army had fought bitterly at Hongdu for 3 months without advancing, suffering heavy casualties and exhaustion. Zhu Yuanzhang's army traveled thousands of miles to rescue the besieged city, with high morale. Second, Chen's ships were large, hard to maneuver, slow, and not agile. Whereas Zhu Yuanzhang's side, though using small boats, had flexible control and an advantage in mobility. Third, Chen Yuliang was hot-tempered and suspicious. His generals didn't dare speak up, opinions were isolated between ranks, and there was internal disunity. In contrast, Zhu Yuanzhang was humble and cautious. With experienced advisors and brave generals, the entire force was united. In the Battle of Poyang Lake, Zhu Yuanzhang launched a fire attack, using numerous firearms to burn the enemy's large ships. Zhu Yuanzhang divided his navy into 11 squads, each equipped with fire lances and longbows. The army fought in several layers, first firing fire lances, then shooting crossbows, and finally soldiers engaged in close combat. Finally, Chen Yuliang was hit by a stray arrow and died. His entire army collapsed, and Zhu Yuanzhang eliminated his greatest rival for supremacy. Shortly after Chen Yuliang's defeat, perhaps by heaven's favor, Chagan Temurer, the Yuan general who led troops south to suppress rebellions, died. The Yuan dynasty fell into internal strife, with several commanders fighting fiercely, and the northern threat suddenly vanished. Zhu Yuanzhang focused entirely on pacifying Jiangnan. In January 1364, at age 36, Zhu was elected king of Wu by the people. In February, Wu forces captured Wuchang, and Chen Yuliang's Han kingdom collapsed. 3 years later, Zhu Yuanzhang captured Suzhou and captured Jiangxiqing, with other minor warlords defeated one after another. Zhu basically unified the region. By 1366, in the Jiangnan region, Zhu Yuanzhang, on his path to the peak of power, no longer needed many concerns. That year, he sent General Liao Yangzhang to escort the Little Ming king across the river, but the Little Ming king drowned during the journey. This undoubtedly resolved the legitimacy issue for him to proclaim himself emperor. In January 1368, 40-year-old Zhu Yuanzhang proclaimed himself emperor in Nanjing, founding the Great Ming Dynasty with the era name Hongwu. That same year, Zhu Yuanzhang launched his northern expedition. In August that year, Min forces captured Dadu, modern Beijing, as Emperor Shun fled north, establishing a unified realm. Over the next 20 years, Zhu continued reclaiming Liaodong, Shanxi, Gansu, Sichuan, Yunnan, ultimately forming Ming's core territory. With this, the major focus of Wu Han's book, Zhu's journey from soldier to emperor, concludes. So, after pacifying the realm, Zhu faced the challenge of governing it. Like every founding emperor in Chinese history, Zhu sought to establish a political system as an unshakable foundation for his dynasty. Yet Zhu's new order everywhere reflected his unique experiences and personality. Two aspects stand out: his hatred of corruption and obsession with power. These factors permeated Hongwu-era politics, profoundly influencing Ming-Qing institutions. Using these traits as entry points, let's explore Zhu's key institutional visions. First, his hatred of corruption. The Yuan dynasty Zhu lived under achieved unification through military conquest. Different from other dynasties emerged when natural economies collapsed and peasants rebelled. New rulers would make concessions, suppress land monopolies, clean up administration, and consolidate power. Yuan faced no such pressure, implementing no grassroots reforms, with predictable results. Especially by late Yuan, official corruption and elite oppression became societal norms. Coming from society's lowest peasant stratum, Zhu personally endured extortion and knew its pain intimately. After founding Ming, Zhu dealt with corruption and exploitation with extreme severity. While claims of flaying may be disputed, Hongwu era certainly saw corrupt officials executed by lingqi. Lingqi was traditionally for treason, but now applied to corrupt officials. Truly, Zhu's bloody purge of corrupt officials exceeded any previous dynasty. As for local powerful landlords, Zhu Yuanzhang often forced him to relocate elsewhere, uprooting them so they couldn't lord it over folks anymore. During Zhu Yuanzhang's rule, such big relocations happened multiple times, like forcing wealthy folks from Suzhou and Songjiang to move to the Huai River Basin and shifting powerful clans from Yunnan all the way to Shandong, stripping them of their roots. This relocation process often ruined local elites, leaving them family broken and destitute, sometimes no different than confiscating property outright. As for officials, Zhu Yuanzhang was super harsh. In Zhu's eyes, officials ought to be frugal and ascetic, practicing self-discipline to toughen up and serve as good parental officials to the people. To this end, Zhu set up a key practice that lasted through Ming and Qing, slashing official salaries to curb their greed and keep them honest. How low did this salary go? A seventh-ranked county magistrate got just 80 dan of rice a year. Back then, one dan was about 100 jin, so that's around 700 to 800 jin of rice. In ancient times, with scarce other foods, raising a big family on just this rice was really tough. Scholarly advisors started showing up in the army. Zhu Yuanzhang's top advisor, Li Shanchong, joined him when Zhu headed south to Chuzhou. Later, he cooked up strategies, bridged army ranks, and made huge contributions to founding the nation. Back then, adopting foster sons was popular in the army to build loyal forces. Zhu Yuanzhang was no exception. He kept brave, sharp youths like Mu Ying close as foster sons to strengthen army bonds. 2 years later, in 1355, the Red Turban Army set up their capital in modern Bozhou, Anhui, crowning their emperor Han Liner, who called himself the Little Ming King and claimed descent from Emperor Huizong of Song. So this regime used Song as its dynastic name. Luo Zixing's troops were active in Anhui too, becoming a key military force this small court leaned on. But not long after the small court started, Guo Zixing died of illness. The Little Ming King named Guo Zixing's son, Guo Tianshu, as Grand Marshal, with Zhu Yuanzhang and Zhang Tianyou as left and right deputy marshals. Though Zhu held the army's third highest spot, Guo Tianshu was young and inexperienced, and Zhang Tianyou couldn't make big decisions. Zhu Yuanzhang could call the shots and get things done, becoming the real commander. In September that year, to solve the army's food shortage, Zhu Yuanzhang decided to cross the Yangtze River and capture modern-day Nanjing. In this battle, Guo Tianshu and Zhang Tianyou both perished, and Zhu Yuanzhang naturally inherited Guo Zixing's entire army, becoming the Grand Marshal. After 4 years of campaigning, with Nanjing as his base, Zhu Yuanzhang captured places like Chengxing, Changzhou, Ningguo, Jiangyin, Huzhou, and Yangzhou, and was appointed by the Little Ming King as Chancellor of the Jiangmen Branch Secretariat, gaining actual control over this region. At this point, Zhu Yuanzhang had completed the first step of his imperial endeavor. It took him 8 years to gain his own armed forces and territory. However, at this time, Zhu Yuanzhang's strength wasn't prominent among the many contenders. To emerge victorious from this crowd, he still had a long way to go. This marks the second step, fierce battles against rival warlords. This section is substantial in the book. Here, I systematically outline Zhu Yuanzhang's adversaries. First, Zhu Yuanzhang's competitors can roughly be divided into two types of regimes. As we mentioned, in 1351, the Red Turban Army rose up, and south of the Yellow River, numerous warlords emerged. These military forces split into two branches. One is the Red Army faction, and the other is the non-Red Army faction. Moreover, even within the Red Turban Army, it split into eastern and western branches. The eastern branch centered around the Huai River Basin, with the Little Ming King as their spiritual leader. The core strength of this part of the Red Turban Army was Zhu Yuanzhang, who held military power. The western branch of the Red Turban Army centered around the Han River Basin, occupying areas like modern Hubei and Jiangxi, with Chen Yuliang being the most powerful among them. He himself established the Han Kingdom and also became emperor. If he were to move east along the river, the first target would naturally be Zhu Yuanzhang in Nanjing. The greatest non-Red Army threat to Zhu Yuanzhang was former salt smuggler Zhang Shicheng, who occupied Suzhou and Hangzhou area, proclaimed himself emperor, and founded the Zhou Kingdom. Zhang Shicheng's territory lay precisely east of the Nanjing area. Thus, Zhu Yuanzhang's greatest threats became clear: Chen Yueling to the west and Zhang Shicheng to the east. These two powers coordinated with each other, aiming to crush Zhu Yuanzhang sandwiched between them. Facing this perilous situation, how did Zhu Yuanzhang carve out a bloody path? Zhu Yuanzhang's path to victory began with establishing a solid rear base. In 1357, after capturing Huizhou, Confucian scholar Zhu Xin advised him with three principles: build high walls, store abundant grain, delay claiming kingship. These three phrases advised him: first, consolidate the rear; second, develop productivity; third, minimize visibility and plan for the long term. This greatly influenced Zhu's later endeavors. After taking Huizhou, he indeed avoided reckless advances into enemy territory. Instead of confronting Chen Yuliang directly in Jiangxi, he focused on stabilizing his rear, which presented two major challenges. First, develop productivity to solve the internal grain crisis. Second, plan long-term to eliminate external military threats. First, let's discuss the grain crisis Zhu Yuanzhang faced. This had been a major army challenge since his early days in Bozhou. Zhu's southward campaign from Huaishi across the Yangtze to capture Jiangnan was largely motivated by securing new regions for army provisions. But after years of war, more joined the army, while fewer farmed. Even in Jiangman's grain belt, requisitioning provisions became extremely difficult. What solution existed? Zhu Yuanzhang implemented military farming. In 1358, he appointed Marshal Kang Mao Kai as agricultural commissioner to manage irrigation, restore farming, and supply the army. Additionally, he sent generals to reclaim wasteland everywhere, establishing reward systems based on production output. Simultaneously, he drafted civilians to farm during planting seasons and train during off times. This military farming system quickly proved effective within years. Soldiers combined farming with military duties, granaries filled with grain, creating this favorable situation. Zhu Yuanzhang explicitly banned grain requisitions from civilians. When launching campaigns, troops no longer needed to plunder local supplies, that stabilizing military morale and winning popular support. Zhu Han commented on Zhu Yuanzhang's military farming policy, saying, "These actions were exactly why all other warlords failed, one after another, while only the latecomer Zhu Yuanzhang succeeded." After Zhu Yuanzhang founded the Ming Dynasty, he promoted this military farming model nationwide, which is what we know as the Huaisuo system. Zhu Yuanzhang himself was super satisfied with this system, saying he supported 1 million soldiers without costing folks a single grain. With internal grain production solved, Zhu started seriously thinking about the strategy of delaying kingship. At the end of Yuan, warlords in the south carved out territories, attacking each other, and often liked to found kingdoms and call themselves emperors, like Chen Yuliang's kingdom. Chen Yuliang's kingdom was Han, and Zhang Shicheng's kingdom was Zhou. Both followed that pattern. Once you proclaim yourself emperor, you become an easy target. Forces within the Red Turban Army would disapprove, and the Yuan army would make you their top priority to hit. Zhu Yuanzhang weighed his own strength and legitimacy, finding them far from sufficient. First off, he was under the Little Mean King's command. Calling himself emperor would mean betrayal, easily isolating him. On the flip side, the Yuan army marched south and defeated the Little Min King, losing the north. Zhu's base was, directly exposed. By not proclaiming emperor, he gave himself room to negotiate with the Yuan. With the enemy strong and him weak, he once sought peace with Yuan general Chahan Taimur to get a breather. So building up strength was the key thing. If Zhu Yuanzhang took the strategy of defeating the warlords one by one. In the second half of 1359, the first to attack Zhu Yuanzhang was Chen Yuliang to his west. After dealing with Hu Weiyang and many founding civil officials, Zhu Yuanzhang permanently abolished the prime minister system. From then on, the emperor directly faced the six ministries, monopolizing power. The prime minister system can be said to be a crucial element in ancient Chinese political power. This position oversaw all administrative affairs, reporting solely to the emperor. Many political decisions weren't made by the emperor alone, but discussed between the prime minister and the emperor. And the prime minister's power was immense, sometimes even to the point of reversing the ruler-subject relationship. For example, Huo Guang of the Western Han, Cao Cao of the Three Kingdoms, and later Emperor Wen of Suiyongjian either deposed emperors or manipulated them. In Zhu Yuanzhang's hands, the prime minister's authority was completely absorbed by imperial power. Even though the Ming later had the Grand Secretariat and the Qing had the Grand Council, these institutions handled prime ministerial duties, but politically they had no independent authority, operating entirely under the emperor's control over civil and military officials. Zhu Yuanzhang essentially reached the peak of his power, becoming a model for later emperors. However, on the path of treating the realm as private property, Zhu gave himself one last insurance. Infecting his sons and grandsons, stationing princes at key locations nationwide, granting them generous stipends, and equipping them with nearly 10,000 guard troops. Shorter princes, like the later Yongle Emperor Zhu Di, even took over defense duties, commanding border generals, showing such trust in his family, yet such wariness toward non-kin generals, a stark contrast. It can be said that at this point, the realm ultimately became Zhu Yuanzhang's private property. In 1398, which is the 31st year of the Hongwu era, in May that year, Zhu Yuanzhang, aged 71 by traditional count, fell ill in bed. After lying there for 30 days, he passed away, concluding the story of this legendary emperor. His ruling tactics and that uniquely personal autocratic monarchy will keep shaping China's history for the next 500 years. Okay, that wraps up our intro to Zhu Yuanzhang's biography. The book notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.